This is our exercising with poles class, and it is week 4 and our final week. So for this class, as the name implies, you're going to need some walking poles. So hopefully you've got walking poles nearby. If for some reason you don't have poles, that's okay. You can still participate in the class, but I will ask that you grab some kind of a stick or long umbrella or something that you can use similar to poles. But ideally you have walking poles as it will be more supportive of what you're doing as we move along today. If you are new today to the class, welcome. Even though it's our final week, we're happy to have you. Now, before we begin, I just want to remind everybody that when you're using your poles, we want to be adjusting the height of the poles. I know we talked about this already in the previous 3 weeks, but the way the class will work is we're going to start in a seated position, and then we'll move into a standing position. And so you'll have to adjust the height of your poles as you're going from sitting to standing, just because we want the poles to be roughly at a height where our elbow is at 90 degrees or as close to 90 degrees as you can. You'll see in a moment when I sit down, I've got my poles at the lowest setting. And so my arm isn't quite at 90 degrees, but you want it to be as close as possible. And then when you're standing up, you definitely want the poles to be around 90 degrees of elbow flexion. And that way is just so we can really maintain our postures and not be stuck in a position where we're too low or we're kind of too high up or hurting our shoulders in weird positions. And so we do want the poles to be roughly at 90 degrees. So just be mindful of that. If you need to change the height of your poles as we do the class today, you are more than welcome to do so. Previous classes, we've had people use ski poles. And so just a word of caution, if you are using ski poles, the bottom of the poles tend to be like a pointy metal part. So just be mindful that you're not going to slip as you're using those poles or damage your floors. So just be a little bit mindful there. But ideally, you've got poles with rubber ends like ferrules at the end or some kind of a walking boot at the bottom. Okay. I think everyone is connected to audio. Except for one person, but that's okay. I'm sure they will be connected in just a moment. I'm going to start moving to my chair now so we can get our class started. And I did plan a bit more cognitive stuff for you today as well. So hopefully it'll help wake up your mind a little bit. Okay, I'm going to move back. So I've got my chair here. I just want to make sure you can see me. Okay. Now, before we start, I'm going to turn sideways for a second. I just want you to see my position. So even though we're starting in a seated position, I don't want to see anyone start like this. And the reason we don't want to be this far back in our chairs and relaxing into the back rest of the chair is because when we're in this kind of reclined position, it's actually really difficult for you to engage your trunk and your muscles to try to move because the entire or the majority of your thighs are resting on the seat. It's going to be really tough to move them, move your legs and in different positions. And so I really want to just draw your attention to your posture as you're sitting. You want to think about using your tummy muscles and moving yourself forward in the seat. So see how far forward I am? I'm sitting forward enough that I can really get nice and tall over my sit bones and that my center of gravity is relatively close to my base of support. Whereas if I'm back here, can you see my base of support? My feet are up here. But then my base of support, my center of gravity is back here. It makes it really tough to get myself forward to stand later on. So I want to make sure I'm nice and forward in my seat and I'm sitting up nice and tall so I can really engage my trunk muscles as we're moving today. Okay, enough of a spiel from me. I'm just going to let people in from the waiting room. But a couple more folks joining. Okay, so I'm sitting in my chair. We're going to hold on to our poles, and I suppose depending on the poles that you have, that the handles might be slightly different. On my poles, I've got a little ledge on the handle where I can kind of rest my hands on, but regardless of what poles you have, I want to go over our 4-point grounding. Let me go back a tiny bit so you can see my feet. I want to go over our 4-point grounding before we start. So we're going to start by having the poles be vertical, so perpendicular to the floor. We don't want the poles on a slant like this or like this. We want them to be straight up and down, so you can see that both poles are very vertical. They're perpendicular to the floor. I'm sitting nice and tall at the front of my seat, and both feet are flat on the floor. And we're going to start by just spreading all 10 toes as wide as we can on the floor. And then I want to think about pressing all 10 toes down into the floor. And then relax for a second. And let's try that again. We're going to try to spread all 10 toes flat onto the floor as wide as we can. And then pressing all 10 toes down into the floor. And then relax. We want to really feel all 10 toes on the floor as well as both heels. And it's almost like the soles of our feet are glued to the floor and we're growing roots deep into the earth from the bottoms of our feet. And this is how we stay connected to the floor as we're moving today. We really want to draw attention to our feet and how connected, how much we're pressing into the floor. We're growing roots deep into the earth in order to stay up, either sit or stand up nice and tall. And then we're going to focus for a moment while maintaining our feet's connection to the earth. We're going to move our attention up towards our hands, our arms, and our poles. And I want to be about digging the 2 points at the bottom of your poles deep into the ground as well, almost like you're imprinting the points in the poles into the floor, growing roots into the floor from your poles. And as you're doing that, I really want you to focus on pressing the entire length of your arms down towards the ground, almost like gravity is pulling your arms and they're nice and heavy the entire way down towards the ground. So we're not just pressing with the hand, but we're pressing with both arms, the entire length of the arms. And you should feel a bit of engagement sort of here underneath your armpits and towards the side of your trunk. And by pressing the entire length of our arms down towards the floor, you should feel like you're growing taller. We're really lengthening our spine and lengthening our necks as we do this. We're going to call this our 4-point grounding. So whenever we talk about 4-point grounding today, this is the connection to the earth that I want you to feel. You're pressing those soles of the feet into the ground and the entire length of the arms pressing down to the ground through your poles. And as we're holding our 4-point grounding position, we're going to enter into a bit of a weight shift. So as we're maintaining our 4-point grounding, I want you to weight shift forward and back in your seat. And as we're doing this, we're still connecting to the earth through the soles of our feet and through the poles by pressing the entire length of our arms down into the poles. And when we're weight shifting here, we're not just moving the arms, we're weight shifting with our pelvis, we're weight shifting with our trunk, with our hips, like we're pressing an imprint into the seat of our chairs. And by default, your arms are also moving because we're doing this 4-point grounding, we're pressing our arms down into the ground, pressing the soles of our feet into the ground. You might feel your arms are getting a little tired. You might start aching a little bit from this engagement, and that's fine. You can always take a rest, ease off a little bit on that grounding through the arms, and then come right back to it if you can. Keep going. Oh, I'm just going to fix some audio issues here. Keep going. Keep with the forward and backwards weight shift. Really thinking about opening the chest, opening the length of the neck. You're pressing the entire length of the arms down into the ground through the poles. And then we're going to come back to neutral again. And now maintaining our 4-point grounding, we're going to go into a lateral weight shift. So you're going to think about, it's almost like you're rocking, if you will, in your seat. But you'll notice that as I'm doing this left to right and vice versa weight shift, I'm not lifting anything. I don't want to shift to one side and then all of a sudden the poles are slipping or lifting up. I want to really think about this 4-point grounding we talked about, where we're maintaining all 10 toes and both heels onto the floor at all times, and we're pressing the entire length of the arms down towards the floor at anything, but I'm pressing down, I'm grounding even more as I'm moving, almost like I'm kind of digging myself down even further toward the earth. And then back to neutral again. We're going to put those two things together in the form of name writing. So now, maintaining our 4-point grounding, I want you to do the same weight shift, but now you're going to write your first and last name with your weight shift. And so you're going in multiple different directions here and changing directions frequently. And while you're doing this, you're going to think about that 4-point grounding. You're really thinking about all 10 toes connecting to the ground, the soles of the feet growing roots deep into the earth, the entire length of the arms pressing down, sinking down towards the ground through our poles. And see if you can continue with this 4-point grounding as you're writing your first and last name. See if you can do 2 times of your first and last name. Unless you have a really short name, then you might want to do 3 times. Really just explore how your body feels as you're moving and drawing some attention to the range of movement you've got perhaps today. And once you're finished, we'll come to some stillness in the middle again, revisiting our posture, thinking about pressing down into the floor in order to grow taller in our posture. So pressing down into the floor, not just through the arms, but through the feet as well. You're pressing all 4 points down into the ground in order to grow taller. And from here, we're going to go into some marching. We're going to keep the arms where they are, but we're going to lift the knees up towards the handles of the walking poles. And as we're doing this marching, I want to challenge you for a second to try to keep everything else completely stationary. It's almost like if I took a big sheet and I covered your legs and I couldn't see them moving and I could only see your arms and your torso and your head, it shouldn't look like anything is moving. So I don't want to see anyone do this. I'm exaggerating, no one's doing it like that. But the idea here is I want to try to focus on dissociating the movement of the legs between movement of the trunk and the rest of the body. So we're not going as fast as we can. In fact, probably the slower, the better, the easier it is to control. And we're going to think about maintaining that tall posture. We're pressing the entire length of the arms down into the ground through the poles, extending our spine, extending the crown of our head towards the ceiling as a result of that. And we're letting the legs come up towards the handle without compromising those postures we just mentioned. Nicely done. Now we're going to take this one step further and see if we can lift the opposite arm to leg as we march now. And see if we can maintain that same tall posture we talked about a second ago. So imagine if now I've covered your arms and legs with a big sheet and I can only see your torso, your head. it shouldn't look like we're moving at all. So if we're like this, then we probably want to either lower the range or slow down a little bit, because I want you to really concentrate on maintaining control of your trunk. We're not going to be loosey-goosey. We're going to be nice and strong, nice and stable in our trunk and our postures. Really think about pressing down into the floor. So even though now we're technically not doing a 4-point grounding, we're doing 2, because at any given time you have either a pole and a foot on the floor. So we got 2-point grounding here, but you really think about every single time any part of your poles or arms or legs or whatever it may be is touching the ground or the seat, you really think about grounding, growing roots through those parts of the body. Nicely done. Let's see if we can now do a kick forward instead. And you're still lifting the opposite arm to leg, but now, because we're adding in that powerful kick, it's going to feel a little more difficult to try to maintain that tall posture and maintain that stable trunk. So just like before, if you imagine I've covered your arms and legs with a big sheet, and I could only see your trunk, your neck, your head, it shouldn't look like you're moving at all. So we don't want to be like this. I'm exaggerating, no one's doing it like that, but we want to try to maintain that posture the entire time. And hopefully you're not holding your breath. Keep going, everyone. Nicely done. For your arms, as they're lifting up, it's kind of like they're punching forward in a way. I mean, you're not actually punching because you're holding onto the poles, but that's sort of the idea. That it's kind of that flicking motion, if you will, with the arms as well. So it's almost like both your arms and legs are doing this kick flick type thing. And you're trying to maintain your stable trunk as you're doing that, really dissociating the limb movement from your trunk. 3 more. 2 more. Last one, and relax for a moment. Okay. Let's do now, we're going to do some steps to the side. So we're going to start with our poles perpendicular to the floor again. So remember, we're not doing a slant. We don't want to be like that. We want the poles to be vertical, so straight up and down and perpendicular to the floor. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to step our leg out to the side and come in, and then out to the side and come in. So we're just going to alternate. Breathing going out to the side and coming in. And as we're doing that, we're going to add on in a second, but as we're doing this, I want you to think about that engagement to the floor you've got through your arms and through the poles. So we're not pressing with the hands, but we're pressing down with the entire length of the arms, growing taller in our posture as we're doing that. And we're maintaining our stable trunk, so we're not wiggling all over the place as we're bringing our leg out to the side. We're thinking about maintaining our height and maintaining that stable trunk. And to add on from here, if you'd like to add on, you don't have to, but if you'd like a little bit of a challenge, as you step out, I want you to bring your opposite arm out to the side. So you're opening the arm, out to the side. And as you're doing this movement, you're of course welcome to it at any speed you like, but as we're doing this, I really want you to, again, focus on your alignment. So ideally, you want to grow tall, even taller than before, if that's possible. You're trying to maintain your height the entire time, and you're keeping your trunk stable. So we don't want to be wiggling around all over the place. We want to maintain this kind of statue-like stability that we have here in the middle. You're growing taller, you're pressing the entire length of the arms down into the floor. Nicely done. Just like before, If I took a big sheet and I covered your arms and legs and I could only see your trunk and your neck and your head, it shouldn't look like you're moving at all. And you'll probably notice my arms are straight, so I'm not doing this, right? I'm opening, I'm keeping my arms straight. Opening. Yes, nicely done. Let's go for last 8. 7, nice and tall. 6, stable trunk. 5, pressing the entire length of the arms down. 4, 3, 2, last one, and rest for a second. Okay, nicely done. Okay, we're going to go into a little bit of a combination now, as if that wasn't enough of a coordination challenge for everyone. We are going to now do a combination step, and it looks like this. I'm going to do the legs first. We're going to go out, out, in, again, out, out, in. So we've done this before, the out, out, in. But now we're going to add the arms and we're going to do the opposite arm to leg. So it looks like this. Out, out, in, out, in. So join me here and try this. You can go slow. Out, out, in. Might take you a little bit of time to figure out this opposition coordination, but I really want you to think about, as you're doing this, we're still maintaining that same height. So just because we're thinking about the combination doesn't mean we're all of a sudden going to be slouching and have the toes kind of slide out. We really want to think about that statue-like posture and stability in your trunk as you're doing this movement. And we want the movement to be relatively big as well, so we don't want to be here. This is a little too small. We want to have it big enough that it's a bit of a challenge for you to maintain the stability of your trunk. And you're remaining nice and tall as if the crown of your head is growing toward the ceiling. Nicely done, everyone. Nice and tall. And you don't have to match my speed. You're more than welcome to slow it down or speed it up if you want a bit more of a challenge. It's up to you. Nice and tall, growing towards the ceiling. Stop here for a second. We're going to find the opposite direction this time. So we did this side first. Now we're going to do the other side, if you can. The other side. Just like before, you're thinking about pressing the entire length of the arms down into the floor. The entire length of the arms into the floor. Growing taller towards the ceiling. Two more. Well done, everyone. Hopefully you're doing okay. I'm going to turn sideways now because we are going to start standing. So before we get off, let's talk a little bit about us standing. So I leave my poles down for a second. If you look at me for a second, if I'm sitting back here in my chair and I'm leaning back into the backrest, or even if you're not leaning back into the backrest, but I'm sitting far back in the chair, if I try to stand, it's really difficult for me to get my base of support on top of my center of gravity on top of my base of support in order to effectively stand. And so when our weight is so far back behind our base of support, usually what happens is you'll feel like you need to pull on something to stand, or you feel like you need to push the back of your legs into something to stand. And that's not really an effective way to be standing. So, or an efficient way either. So we're trying to bring our center of gravity as close to our base of support, i.e. our feet, as possible. So we're shuffling ourselves forward in the seat. And if you look at how I'm standing for a second, you almost want to imagine like someone's grabbed your shirt and they're pulling you forward over your feet. So I'm trying to get my center of gravity, my hips in this case, my center of gravity forward over my base of support in order to balance enough to then push the floor away from me to stand up. And then same thing when you're sitting down. I'm gonna stick my bottom back, bend my knees, but can you see my center of gravity is still on top of my base of support the entire way down, so that I'm not falling back into the seat. We want to really control our sit to stand. And so if we practice that for a second, with poles a little more, it's a little different, but you can either do this with poles, or you can do this by holding onto the armrest of your seat if you have armrest, or the actual seat of your chair. But essentially what we're going to do is we're going to bring ourselves forward so that our center of gravity, hips in this case, is as close to our base of support, i.e. our feet, as possible. And then from here, we're going to reach our poles forward, and we're going to try to bring our trunk for our center of gravity forward over our feet, and then push the floor away to stand. And you'll notice that when I stand, the poles are not quite as high because I had to adjust them for seated, but for now it's okay. And then when we sit back down, same thing. You're thinking about sticking your bottom back, chest forward, but you see how I'm keeping my center of gravity on top of my base of support to then control that descent. And try it again. So we're going to keep doing this for a little bit. We're going to just spend a minute or two practicing our sit to stand. So you're really going to think about controlling how you're sitting to standing and standing to sitting. In fact, the slower you go, the better, because that means you're controlling it and you're not necessarily using momentum. So we're really thinking about building strength in our body to be able to efficiently do a sit to stand without having to swing ourselves up or pull ourselves up. Because in a simple way of wording it, balance is essentially our ability to keep our center of gravity on top of our moving base of support. So in this case, our base of support isn't moving because our feet are staying on the floor, but as we start walking and turning and pivoting and all sorts of things that we do on a daily basis, we have to keep our center of gravity on top of our base of support in order for us not to fall. And so drawing awareness to where your center of gravity is and being able to control or practice bringing your center of gravity over top of your base of support is a really useful skill, because really the beginning part of trying to improve your balance is to be a bit more self-aware about where your limbs are and how you're moving. Nicely done, everyone. Wherever you are, we're just going to do 2 more in your own time. And on your second stand, you're going to stay standing. But take your time. We're going to do 2 and just in your own time. And then stay standing for your second one. Don't worry if you're not done. Take your time. There's no rush. But once you are up, you can start adjusting your poles to the right height. So your poles probably have to be a little bit taller because we're no longer sitting. So if you look at my arm for a second, you can see that my pole is at a height where my arm is about 90 degrees. That's essentially what you want. All right, so now that we're standing, we're going to revisit our 4-point grounding for just a second so we can really reconnect. So my poles are vertical to the floor again, so I'm not having them on a slant, right? I don't want them like that. I want them to be vertical, straight up and down, perpendicular to the floor. We're going to think about pressing molten toes, the soles of our feet, and both heels deep into the ground. Almost like you're inwards from all those points into the floor. And then same thing with the arms. We're thinking about pressing the entire length of the arms down into the poles, into the floor. So I don't want just the handle, but I want the entire arm pressing down into the floor. And this is how we stay connected to the floor while we're doing our standing. And from here, keeping our 4-point grounding, we're going to start to weight shift, just like we did in sitting. Let me turn sideways. We're going to start to weight shift. I'm weight shifting forward and back. And you can see I'm not bending my knees or moving my hips. I'm keeping my body in one straight line. It's almost like I'm a reverse pendulum. Can you see that? So everything is completely straight, but I'm swaying on the spot forward and back. And you don't have to move quite as big of a range as what I'm doing. I'm sort of exaggerating it a little bit so you can see better, but you want to keep all 10 toes and your heels on the floor at all times, pressing down into the poles by the entire length of your arms. And you're kind of bringing some awareness to how much you can shift your center of gravity over your base of support without losing balance and without having to take a step to save your balance. And you might find that your range isn't very big right now, and that's okay. Or you might find that your range is relatively large, or it's getting bigger with practice. We're just going to take some time to really explore the outer ranges of where we can go without losing our balance and without having to take a step to save our balance. And we can do the same thing going sideways. So just like we did in sitting, we can also weight shift sideways. And you'll notice that when you weight shift sideways, you have a bigger range because your base of support is bigger, right? Because our feet are apart, whereas if they're closer together, the base of support is much smaller, so it's much harder. And this is why sideways weight shifting is a little easier than forward and back, because if I'm going forward and back, my range, my base of support is only the length of my feet, so it's quite small. Whereas when I go sideways, the wider my feet, the easier, because the more we're going to have, but of course you can play around with that and try to go for a narrower stance and see. You might need to widen your poles to give yourself more stability, but you can play around with what range you've got. And then when you're ready, I'm going to invite you to do this weight shift in the way of name writing. So just like we did before in sitting, see if you can write your first and last name 3 times. Or 2 times, sorry, but if your name is really short, go for 3. And you're using that same technique. It doesn't have to be fast. You can go slow, but you're trying to write your name as big as you possibly can without losing your balance or without having to take a step to save your balance. And the wider your poles, probably the easier and more stability you'll feel. Nicely done, everybody. We're making sure the poles are staying connected to the floor. Nice job, everyone. And then once you're done, find some stillness again. You're welcome to shake out your legs, shake out your arms if you need. And we're going to go into some lunges. I'm going to turn sideways so you can see. We are going to go for a forward lunge. Coming back, other side. Forward lunge. Coming back. So when I'm lunging, I'm moving my opposite arm to that leg to help me with my stability. I've got a pole coming forward to help. And it's almost like I'm trying to kneel on the floor, but not quite. If you can't quite get that low, that's okay. Just go with whatever you're able to, even if it's like a step. But I do want you to not do a small step. We want to go for as big of a step as we can. And while we're doing this, we're still thinking about our nice tall posture. We're still aiming for that 4-point grounding we spoke about. Except just then lunging. Nicely done. Nicely done, everyone. Keep going. I'm just going to check the chat box for a second because I think I saw a comment. Let me just see here. Keep going. Oh, okay. Nicely done. On your next one, we're going to hold and pulse for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Coming back. Other side. Same thing. Pulsing 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Coming back up. Nicely done. Shake out those legs for a second. Okay. We're now going to do our sideways squat. So it's going to look like this. Bring my leg out to the side, squat, come back in. Other side, squat, come back in. Squat, come back in. Squat, come back in. And as we're doing this, I want you to really focus on how much vertical displacement you can get. So we don't want our height to be like this the entire time. We want to get lower and then taller and then lower and then taller. So you want there to be a vertical height displacement. You want to get low and then tall and then low and then tall. Yes, nicely done. And you're pushing with that leg to come back in the center. And you want to try to bring that leg out as wide as you can. Hopefully you just hit your wall like I did. And as you're doing that, try to see if even when you're down in the squat, can you keep your spine as long as you can? So we're not like this, right? But we're like this. Even though we're getting lower, we're still nice and tall, opening those knees out to the side, nice and tall as we're doing our squats. Nicely done. Might find it easier pointing your knees out to the side, opening the inner thighs. Nicely done. On the next one, we're going to hold and hold for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Coming back. Same on the other side. Pulsing for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Coming in, shaking out those legs. Nicely done. Okay, I'm going to turn sideways again. And we're going to do the same thing going backwards this time. So just be a little careful here because backwards is a little more difficult to balance. So we are going to lunge back and we're going to use the opposite arms and legs. So if my right leg is going back, then my left arm is going to go back. So opposite arm to leg. Lunging back. If you're doing a step instead of lunge, that's okay. But I do want to invite you to try to take as big of a step as you can. So if you're doing a step, that's fine. But I don't want it to be like this. Because you see how my trunk hasn't really moved? I want you to move back, move back. So if you're not doing lunge, that's okay. Even if you're doing a step, we still want it to be as big of a step as you can, and it doesn't have to be my speed. You're more than welcome to slow it down. Nicely done. Ooh, anyone else sweating? Keep going. Nice job, everyone. On the next one, you're gonna hold and pulse for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Coming back, other side, pulsing for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Coming back. Shake out those legs, shake out the arms. Nice job. Grab some water if you like, and then we're going to come back and do a couple of different combinations. Feel free to grab some water. I'll just make sure there's no questions. Okay. Hopefully everyone's doing okay. I haven't lost anyone, so that's good. Okay. When you're ready, we'll start making our way back. And we're going to start, just lower the line. Oops, there we go. There's a bit of a glare on the computer. I wasn't sure if you could see. Okay. So we're going to do a little bit of a reaction drill, if you will. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to imagine that we're standing in the middle of a clock face. A clock face. So if you imagine the clock face is on the floor, we're standing in the middle. We've got numbers all around us on the clock, right? We've got 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So you've got all 12 numbers on the clock around you because you're standing right in the middle. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to try to stand with our feet together or narrow. We don't want the legs like this. We want them to be relatively narrow. And I'm going to call out a random number, and I want you to step on that number. For example, 12 o'clock. You would step on 12 o'clock. And I mean as in the feet. The arms can do what they want, but you'll notice that there's a natural tendency to move your poles in order to keep you balanced as you're doing this. And if I said, for example, 9 o'clock, you step out to 9 o'clock. If I said 4 o'clock, you probably step up to 4 o'clock, and so on and so forth. And as we're doing this, I really want you to be mindful of the space you have around you, and hopefully you're not going to trip on anything, especially anything from 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock can feel a little bit iffy with balance. So just be careful, be mindful. But I want you to think about stepping on the numbers, and we're going to start really slow, and then we're going to slowly get faster, and we'll see how we do as we get faster. Let's start with 12 o'clock. 8 o'clock. 2 o'clock. 9 o'clock. 5 o'clock. 6 o'clock. 11 o'clock. 10 o'clock. 2 o'clock. 5 o'clock. 7 o'clock. 4 o'clock. 3 o'clock. 9 o'clock. 12 o'clock. 4 o'clock. 3 o'clock. 6 o'clock. 7 o'clock. 6 o'clock. 12 o'clock. 1 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and rest. We did get pretty quick there. Okay, how do we do? It's actually a lot, isn't it, when you have to think about what the directions are while you're also stepping, so it can be quite challenging. But the idea of this is, as you get better at it, you want to imagine the clock face getting bigger and bigger, so that maybe right now we're doing this, but eventually you're doing this, and you're really taking a big step to either side, to all of the numbers. Okay, let's try some combinations, and then we're going to do a little bit of dual tasking as well. Let me just check the time. Okay, we have about 10 minutes. That's good. I don't want to go over. Okay, let's do some trunk rotations first. We're going to start by having the legs out wide, so wider than your hip width and wider than your shoulders. And what we're going to do here is we're going to rotate. Oops, let me move forward. I'm going to hit my roll there. We're going to pick up one stick and we're going to rotate to the back, almost like we're trying to present our pole or give our pole to someone behind us. And we're going to just alternate on both sides, rotating to the back, like you're passing your pole to someone behind you. So your legs are glued to the floor, so you're not lifting your legs, just rotating here on the slot. And feel free to take your time. It doesn't have to be fast. You can do it slower, especially if you have any back issues and you can't do it fast, that's okay. Just go slow and go for a range that works for you. We're going to try to get the element of stretch. We're going to twist all the way back if you can. Good. Keep it going. Now, option here, you can either stay in this position of rotation, or if you'd like to add a bit of a challenge, I'm going to challenge you to lift up the same leg as arm that is rotating. And see if you can maintain your balance as you are doing this. So we're still thinking about passing our poles to somebody behind us. Oops, I'm going to move forward again. I keep hitting my back pocket. And you can do this slow, it doesn't have to be my speed. And you can also just offer the arms and not do the legs, that's fine. Whichever version you like is absolutely fine. We're going to go for last 10. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and rest. Okay, we're going to do a last bit of combination, and then we're going to work on some dual tasking. Ooh, actually, maybe let's do our dual tasking. I'm thinking that might take a little bit of time. The combination I have for you is similar to last week, but I do think perhaps the dual tasking will be a little bit challenging. So maybe let's do that. And then if we have time at the end, we can move back to the combination, or we can just do our warm up. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. This is going to be a good one for your brain. It's going to be a little tough, but we'll see. Okay, so your left pole is going to be the color black. Your right pole is going to be the color white. Your left foot is going to be blue, and your right foot is going to be red. Okay, let's do that again. And also, I don't know if my picture is mirrored, so if I'm lifting up my left arm, but it looks like the right one to you, maybe don't look at me and just focus on your limbs. That might be easier. But your left pole is going to be black. Your right pole is white. Your left foot is blue. And your right foot is red. Okay, one more time. Left pole is black. Right pole is white. Left foot is blue. Right foot is red. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. You're just gonna walk in the space that you've got. You're gonna walk around your room in whatever direction you like. And I'm gonna call out those 4 numbers. So if I say black, you're gonna lift your left arm because that one is black. The pole, we said left pole is black. And you're gonna keep walking. If I said red, you're gonna lift your right foot and keep walking. If I said white, you're gonna lift your right pole. And if I say blue, you're gonna lift your left leg. Kind of makes sense? So all you're doing is you're walking in your room in whatever direction you want. You can do figure of 8, you can go sideways, you can do whatever you want. We're just walking, but I'm gonna call out those colors and you're gonna lift the corresponding limb. So start walking and I'll just remind you of the colors. Left pole is black. Right pole is white. Left foot is blue. Right foot is red. Keep walking. Your right foot. Keep walking. Blue. That's your left foot. That's right. Keep walking. Black. That's your left pole and keep walking. White. That's your right pole. Nicely done. If you're getting confused by looking at me, it might be better to not look at my video, but just really concentrate on the different colors in your ring. So again, black is left pole, white is right pole, blue is left foot, and red is right foot. White. Black. Nicely done, everyone. Blue. Blue. White. 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 Blue. Red. Blue. And rest. How do we do, everyone? Are the brains feeling a little fried? I think that actually went pretty well. I saw most people able to do it. I always find it's easier when you don't look at my screen because I think the picture isn't quite mirrored, or sometimes you get confused when you're looking at what I'm doing. And so it's good practice to kind of remember the colors for yourself. And it's almost better to look at the floor or look at the walls. And so you're really concentrating on what number or what colors are which limbs. Okay, let's do a bit of a cool down. And we'll start with our stretches. Nicely done, everyone, today. We're going to start by bringing one leg back, Our front leg is bent and our back leg is straight. And you're gonna try to really straighten that back knee and reach that back heel to the floor. Now, if you're finding that you're not able to straighten your knee, you might need to bring that leg in a little more. You might not straighten it fully, but if you're like this, then you probably need to bring your leg in a little more. But you should feel a stretch in the back calf muscle. Breathing as you're doing that, really push that back knee straight, dig that heel into the floor. And let's switch. Same on the other side, bending that front knee, straightening the back knee, really reaching that back heel to the floor. Breathing as you're doing this. Hopefully nobody's holding your breath. Good, coming back up. Let's do it in our thigh stretch. I'm gonna bring my leg out to the side like so, and I'm bending that leg. One leg is bent, one leg is straight. And what I'm doing here is I'm pushing my hips back. So if you look at me sideways for a second, I'm pushing my hips back in order to feel that stretch on the inner thigh. So the more you straighten your spine and stick your bottom back, the more you'll feel, there's a fly in the room, the more you'll feel that stretch in the thigh, inner thigh. That's it, nicely done. Keep your spine straight, but you're hinging at the hips. And coming back up. Let's do the same thing on the other side. You're sticking your bottom back, hinging at the hips, but keeping your spine nice and long if you can. And breathing. And coming back up. Let's do our thigh stretch. So you might want to leave one of your poles to the side. Or you can hold on to the wall, whatever works for you. So you have two options. Number one, you can grab your foot and pull it towards your bottom. Keep your knees in one line and push your hips forward to feel a stretch in the front thigh. Or if this is too much for you, you can also grab a chair and you can put your leg on the chair behind you and still keep your knees in one line and push your hips forward. And you should feel a stretch in the front thigh as well. The higher the seat, the more of a stretch you'll feel. So if you're kind of in between the two and you're doing this chair option, you can always place cushions on your chair seat so that your leg is higher and therefore you'll feel a deeper stretch. Up to you, whichever version feels better for you. And let's do the same thing on the other side. So again, you can either hold your foot, pull it up to your bottom, knees in one line and push your hips forward, or you can place your foot onto a seat behind you, whatever works for you. Nicely done, and relax. I'm gonna move the chair. We're gonna come to a wall. See if you can lean back into a wall here. Keeping your back on the wall, your hips on the wall, you can widen your stance, and you can widen your arms out as well. We're gonna try to see if we can get the arms against the wall, or as close to the wall as you can. If you can't, open your arms all the way to the wall. But you want the arms and legs to be wide. And then from here, what you're gonna do is you're gonna imagine that you've got some paint at the base of your neck. So kind of here behind where your ears are, imagine you've got a point of paint right here, and you're going to press that point into the wall, and you're going to slide that point up the wall. So it's almost like you're tucking your chin in and making a double chin, so you're lengthening your neck. And then you're going to think about squeezing the shoulder blades together, almost like you've got a pencil between your shoulder blades. And then relax, same thing, squeezing the shoulder blades in. And relax, one more time. Squeezing the shoulder blades in together. Really pressing your shoulders back into the wall so you're nice and straight. And relax. Last little bit, we're gonna put our poles together. Actually, I'm gonna put one down, but we'll put it together. We're gonna hold it nice and wide, hold it up in front of us, and we're gonna rotate. Oops. We're gonna rotate like so. Doesn't have to be really high, just a nice comfortable height for you. Just rotating. Nice bit of a mobility movement for your back. And we're gonna go into some kayaking. Whoops. I keep hitting my wall here. We're gonna go into some kayaking, albeit a wide grip. And as I'm doing this, you'll notice I'm really rotating my body. So I'm kind of doing a figure of eight, if you will, with the breastbone. So I'm not just doing this with the arms, but I'm rotating downwards to where the poles are kind of accelerating to. Nicely done. Last bit, reaching the arms all the way up to the ceiling and as high as you can go, almost like there's magnets on the wall or on the ceiling, and your poles are magnetic and they're cleaning up towards the ceiling, they're getting sucked up towards the ceiling, and keeping them sucked up towards the ceiling. We're just going to kind of flex to the side a little bit, but our poles are still inching up to the ceiling because of those imaginary magnets. And then we're coming back to the middle and doing the same to the other side, a little bit of a stretch for you there. Back to the middle and drop the arms and you are done. Thank you everyone for joining us for session 4 of exercising with poles. I hope you enjoyed that. This is our last exercise class until the new year. So in the new year, we've got some Tai Chi coming, we've got boxing as well, and lots of things planned. So please keep an eye out for those things in the new year. They will be listed soon before the year ends. So have a look at that. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope that you enjoyed it. And I will see you in the future, I'm sure. Thank you, everyone.